The flying doctors will not hire glass-trained pilots. Hey, good morning, Emily. Welcome. Let us begin. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your goodness. Thank you so much for the way that you care for us. And I want to thank you for all of the good blessings that we've been able to share with each other this morning. Thank you for the rest that's coming up. Thank you for the good weather that we've had. Thank you for the cooler weather. I want to thank you too, Lord, for the way that you have taken care of Miguel's sister as she has been travelling. I want to thank you for the good reports we've had today. And as we jump into class, I pray that you'd guide us. Thank you. Amen. I'd like to share a thought. Good morning, Hisek and Abby. I'd like to share a thought with you this morning from World War II. This is a story, a true story, that happened in the Atlantic. Just a very short story. On February 3, 1943, the troopship Dorchester went down in the icy Atlantic off the tip of Greenland with a heavy loss of life. It was not the worst disaster of a long war, but we have good reason to remember it. There were 4 men aboard. Well, there are a lot more men than that. But there were four chaplains aboard who had dedicated their lives to the service of God and their fellow men. George Fox and Clark Poling were Protestant ministers. Alex Good was a Jewish rabbi, and John Washington was a Catholic priest. When the torpedoes struck around 1 o'clock in the morning, many of the inexperienced GIs, as the troops, were caught sleeping without their life jackets, even though that was contrary to orders. In the fright and confusion, some were still without them, even after all the surplus stocks had been distributed. Each of the 4 chaplains wore a life jacket when he began working among the men to comfort the wounded, to calm the shock, to help distribute life jackets, to guide men toward the lifeboats. Places in the lifeboats were declined by these 4 chaplains. When last seen in the light of flares just before the ship went down, not one of those chaplains still wore a life jacket. Theirs had been forced onto unwilling soldiers who were taught to obey the orders of their superiors. These 4 dedicated men, symbolic of religious freedom in America, stood together arm in arm, praying for those young men of America for whom now only prayers were left. I leave that thought with you this morning because I think there's horsepower in it. Good morning, Mr. Emmanuel.
Good morning.
It's hard to imagine what's in store for each of us. Our lives are very interesting indeed, but I would encourage you to think joyfully about what lies ahead, even in the face of adversity. I'm going to turn on this projector and see if I can get this up on the screen. If you happen to have your fire aims handy, you might want to just catch up with me, 91219, and we're going to quickly review and finish what we kind of skimmed very briefly at the end of Wednesday's class. Then we're going to hop into the AIM, the Aeronautical Information Manual. This will be a quick review, but I just want to make sure that we're cool with this. The new glass cockpit airplanes that we have, some of you guys I think are flying down in Napa right now. Are you flying down in Napa, Noah? Are you in the 172? Yeah. Does it have altitude pre-select and altitude warnings when you level off at pre-selected altitudes? Is it a chime or is it a display or is it both?
I think it's just a display. I haven't heard anything.
Okay, it's ALT and then it kind of highlights in green or something like that? Yep. So that technology back in the 60s and 70s and 80s was all mechanical. You'd hear a chime and you'd see a flag or something like a light that would illuminate on your altimeter, like the altimeter had like a little amber light, ding, as a little indication. So this is specifically required for turbojet powered civil airplanes, but you'll begin to see, I don't know if you can see behind here, there's a little glass cockpit G1000 poster. It's becoming more standard even though it is not yet technically required for non-turbojet powered aircraft. For small aircraft it's not required, but it is becoming more of a standard and it does take off some pressure. So just as a quick reminder from Wednesday, if you are approaching an altitude, your aeroplane should have an ability to select a manual altitude. If the controller says descend to 5,000, you'll put 5,000 into the altitude window on your aircraft. And then when you approach that altitude, it should tell you either by audio or by visual signals, or perhaps in most cases it's both. I'm pretty sure even in the G1000 that Noah's flying, I'm pretty sure there's probably a chime or like a ding or something coming through the headset, I would imagine. It certainly would be an option for that aircraft to just turn it on in a menu. In Australia right now, even in the aircraft that are not required to have this, they are required to have just like a, what do you call it? Like a bug that you set onto your altimeter, or it's like a little, like the transponder, you put the numbers into the window, 1200, you can pop your altitude into that window, 5500 is your altitude. So you can, when the controller tells you what your altitude is, you can pop it into this little dummy face window. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't make any noises, it doesn't indicate anything, but it's just staring at you in the face so that you can remember, oh, the controller last told me to hold 5,500 or whatever that altitude is. That is a requirement for all IFR aircraft in Australia, even Cessna 152s. So that's something that is a hybrid that gets us halfway there. Okay, let's have a look a little bit more. It's 91219AB. Let's have a look here at paragraph C. Each operator to which this section applies must establish and assign procedures for the use of the altitude alerting system or device. What does that mean? What does it mean, paragraph C, that each operator must establish and assign procedures for the use of the altitude alerting system or device?
Like in your 135 or 121 manual, you have to say how you're going to use it.
Okay. How about if I'm under part 91? Let's say that I have my own, I'm John Travolta. I've got my own personal 707 and I want to go fly. Because this would apply to part 91, if I own my own personal 707, right? A 4-engine turbojet. So how would I comply in that case? Each operator to which the section applies must establish. So who's going to be the operator of John Travolta's 707? And what's he going to do about it? Okay, so it's going to be the person who's flying the plane. So if John says, hey, I'm going to fly my plane, and he's in the left seat, he needs to somehow comply with this. How is he going to comply with this? So there's going to have to be some kind of a procedure, a checklist, some kind of a publication, because it's a 2-crew aircraft, or it might even be a 3-crew aircraft. That one, I think it's a 3-crew aircraft. When the controller tells us to maintain flight level 270, the pilot flying will set 270 on the altitude pre-select, and then the pilot monitoring will call and tell center that they are maintaining that altitude. So there's a script, there's a procedure to follow. Each flight crew member must comply with those procedures assigned to him, and of course him means her too, right? It's gender inclusive. Paragraph D. Someone want to read that for us? Mr. David, perhaps. Paragraph D, please. Just the preamble.
This section does not apply to any operation of an airplane that has an experimental system or operation of any airplane that involves.
Okay, so if I have an experimental aircraft, or if I wanted to cheat, I could go to the FAA and say, hey, Mr. FAA, my 707 used to be a certified aircraft. I would like to install a flat screen TV in this 707, and just so I can watch my movies and stuff, and I don't really want to have to go through a lot of process of getting an STC or approval for that flat screen TV. So I'd like to convert my airplane into an experimental aircraft. It doesn't anymore comply with the standard airworthiness requirements, so that would mean that I could also not worry about that anymore if that was really important to you. All right.
I'm just thinking, so the Cirrus jet would also have to have like the little one, the detail.
A turbojet powered civil airplane. Yep.
Weight. No. Okay. Cool.
There's no weight requirement there.
So anybody that flies on those has to have a procedure.
Yes. It's the privilege of having a whining jet in the front. You've probably heard the joke before. I probably won't share that joke. Never mind. All right, traffic collision avoidance system, TCAS, 91.221. So what does this tell us? 91.221A. Mr. Emmanuel.
Any traffic alert and collision avoidance system installed in a U.S. registered civil aircraft will be approved by the administrator.
Okay, and I kind of like how Mr. Emmanuel emphasized the word civil aircraft, because if it was not a civil aircraft, you could get away with it. So military aircraft, they do their own thing. But civil aircraft, if you install it, it's got to be approved. And what about paragraph B, Mr. Heisek?
Traffic alert and collision avoidance system operation required each person operating an air traffic lift with an operable traffic alert and collision avoidance systems will have that system on and operating.
Okay, so if you install it, it has to be approved. If it's installed, it has to be on.
So approved, is that like an STC or is that like a letter to the victim?
I think that allows for either one. I don't think we're talking about approved versus acceptable here. I think we're just saying it has to be something that the FAA has provided a pathway for it to be installed. So it could be an STC, it could be a field approval, it could be some kind of a alternate method of compliance, but the FAA has to be on board somehow. Okay, that's traffic alert and collision avoidance system. Stay tuned here. I wouldn't be surprised if this part grows in the coming years, especially as we get busier airspaces and we're having more close, what we call air proximity situations. I would imagine that could be an area for growth. Similarly, TCAS, this is a similar story. You can see there's a bit of a date here, paragraph B. We need to start thinking about terrain awareness and warning system. By the way, what is a terrain awareness and warning system? Any ideas about that? Miss Abby? Have you heard about the terrain awareness and warning system before? No. That's it. That's very good. So it's going to either send an alarm or a voice call out, terrain, terrain, too low, pull up, pull up. And if you've got a screen there, it'll probably show you where the terrain is and turn red. Yes?
I know the 430s have a card for that they don't put that out anymore for the 430 actually yell at you.
Yeah, I think our Cherokee 824 had a terrain call out, right? Is that right, David, Noah? Yeah. I don't think the trouble with, there's two database cards for the 430, 530. One of those is a database, which is all the FAA fixes and routes and approaches and procedures and departures and so forth. But there's a second card for the terrain database. And that one, I don't think they actually have an update for it anymore. I've been looking for it, and I don't think they provide it. So the database that we have right now I think came out like 6 or 7 years ago, and then when somebody builds a new antenna on top of a mountain somewhere, that tower contractor has to notify the FAA. FAA notifies Garmin. Garmin puts it in their databases, but Garmin doesn't support the Garmin 430, 534 obstacles anymore. So it's probably...
Yell at you, though, in theory.
Well, it'll still yell at you. Well, it's not going to yell. It's going to just probably turn red and say, I think it says terrain or something like that. Just the screen just turns red. But it's that data's not accurate anymore because they've got no update. It could be that there's a tower on Mount St. Helena that's taller than it was 7 years ago, but we don't know about that. The new, I think in Charlie, the G3X does have the base update, and Garmin does support the new stuff still. So I'm pretty sure Charlie will yell at you and draw pictures on the map and so forth. Anyway, so if we meet these requirements, except as provided in paragraph D, no person may operate a turbine-powered US registered civil airplane. So we're talking about, once again, jets. And that's got their aircraft manufactured before to the except as provided in paragraph D, no person may operate blah, 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 with 6 or more passenger seats. So a Cirrus jet might fit into this if it was manufactured before this date. I don't think it was, but theoretically it could fit if it was an older manufactured aircraft. Okay, then we've got some comments here. Paragraph D, exceptions that apply to parachuting operations entirely within a 50-mile radius of the airport from which blah, 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 firefighting operations and operations incident to aerification of chemicals and other substances. If you're doing crop dusting, firefighting, and parachute jumping, you don't have to worry about terrain awareness and warning systems.
Are there turbine-powered crop dusters? Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, they're turbo-prop.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about crop dusters. I know certainly firefighting we see it a lot more now. Has anybody seen any jet-powered crop dusting aircraft? I haven't. I wouldn't be surprised if some Eastern European countries do that. They probably just use number 2 farmers diesel or stove oil or something because it's all the same thing, right? Okay, ADSB after January 1, 2020, unless authorized by ATC. And that's important. If you don't have it, you can call ATC and request an authorization. So you guys flying the Tiger and you're frustrated like me that we can't go into ADSB airspace, you do have the ability to call and ask for an exception. That's Class A airspace. There's the requirements. These TSO, technical service orders, are telling you the requirements for that particular equipment that's installed. And then after that date, you can't do it unless otherwise authorized by ATC. No person may operate in airspace in paragraph D. And it's the same thing. Now, paragraph D is going to be Class B airspace, Class C airspace, in the Mode C Vale of Class Bravo, above Class Bravo, above Class Charlie, and then above 10,000 feet when you're above 2,500 MSL. All that same place you're required to have the transponder, ADSB is now required, and you have to have it unless you're authorized by ATC. That started on January 1, 2020. We got that lined up just in time for COVID. Okay, there is an exception in paragraph E. Who is allowed to not have ADSB in their aircraft? Let's see, who would like to help me out with that one? Christian says, Christian, paragraph E.
The requirements in paragraph B of the section do not apply to any aircraft that was not originally certificated with an engine-driven electrical system, or that is not subsequently been certified with such a system installed, including avoidance of gliders. These aircraft may conduct operations without ADSB out in airspace specified in paragraph 4.
So D4 is just the class Echo, right? You still can't go into Bravo, Charlie, and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
These aircraft may also conduct operations in airspace specified in paragraph 2 if these operations are conducted, 1, outside any class B or C airspace area, and below the altitude of the ceiling of the class B or C airspace,
Okay, so you can get permission to go above 10,000 feet, above 2,500 AGL, or you can operate inside the Mode C veil, provided that you honour the airspace altitude. Pretty straightforward. Any questions about that? No. And I don't know if we want to go through all of this. There's a couple more things to be aware of. There's unmanned aircraft there in H. Here's a request in paragraph G to ATC for deviations. Let's move on because we've got a bit more to cover. There's some more ADSB out. There's some definitions that we might need to be aware of. If you're having trouble, right now we're having trouble with the Tiger, we've got these checks that says, hey, NIC is not working, or NACV is not working properly. So we can go here and read what all that means. What is that NICV, or what is that SIL? And then we'll talk to the manufacturer and see if they can help us fix it somehow. Okay, let's now sneak over to the Aeronautical Information Manual, the second half of your book. If you go to the FAA website, it'll be like this on the right. One thing that I'm a bit frustrated about with the FAA website is they don't give you chapter numbers. So I've gone to GLIME as an example. Today we're going to have a look at chapter 4, which is air traffic control. But you notice air traffic control is the fourth chapter. If you start counting down 1, 2, 3, that's general. 1, 2, 3, 4, air traffic control. Air traffic control chapter 4. Everything cross-references, but the FAA just didn't put numbers on the website. I don't know why, but that's where we're at. Let's go to air traffic control, which is chapter 4. Just for reference, by the way, those of you going for your commercial CFI check rides, it's really helpful for you to be basically aware of what you find in this book. Chapter 6, for example, emergency procedures, that's a good chapter for you to be well aware of. Those of you working on your instrument rating, chapter 5 is going to be really helpful to you. So chapter 5 for the instrument, chapter 6 for the commercial. There's some other stuff here that might also be of interest, medical stuff. If you're doing unmanned aircraft systems or UAVs. And today we're going to be looking at air traffic control section 4. Let's have a look at that. Inside, and in each of these chapters you can see are going to be subdivided. So traffic chapter 4 is going to be subdivided into these 6 sections. I guess, sorry, 7 sections. And once again, under air traffic control, the FAA website does not have any numbers for it. You're going to have to run through this. We're going to go to section 6 today. Those of you working on your instrument rating, section 4 and section 2 will be very helpful to you. We're going to go to section 6 today. So here we go, inside section 6. We're going to be talking about RVSM. What is RVSM? Christian.
Reduced vertical separation.
Very good. Which means it means airplanes can fly closer together legally at high altitudes. Normally, here in the lower altitudes, we're 1,000 feet apart, right? So odd plus 5, even plus 5, or actually we're only 500 apart because we have odds and evens for IFR. We have odds plus 5 and evens plus 5 for the VFR. So there's only 500 foot increment differences. When you get up to higher altitudes, we now have a requirement for aircraft to be 4,000 feet apart from each other unless they comply with RVSM. And as you probably have found out, above flight level 290, if your aircraft is not RVSM approved, you can't even operate up there anymore. They won't let you because they think that you're not equipped to be safe at that altitude. We're going to spend a few minutes today just looking briefly at what the AIM says about RVSM requirements. So this section We're talking about chapter 5, section 6. 4, 6. There's the references here. Chapter 4, section 6, paragraph 1. Applicability and RVSM mandates. This is for the lower 48, for Alaska, the Atlantic and Gulf of America high offshore airspace. Also SAN 1 FIR, where VHF or UHF voice direct controller is available. And it tells us about those policies. The requirements. Let's have a look at paragraph B. Flight level 290 to flight level 410. Do you mind reading that one for us, Emily? Is that all right?
The FAA implemented RVSM to flight level 290 to 410, inclusive in the following airspace: the airspace of the lower 48 states of the United States, Alaska, Atlantic, and Gulf of America, high offshore airspace, and SAN 1 FIR. RVSM has been implemented worldwide and may be applied in all ICAO flight information.
Okay, very good. So flight level 290, or a pressure altitude of 29,000 feet, to flight level 410, or a pressure altitude of 41,000 feet. That's the airspace we're talking about today. So if you're between 29,000 and 41,000, and that's not just, this is talking about the US, but this applies worldwide. Okay, so we have to have authorization. We're not going to spend the time, but there it is. 14 CFR section 91-180, or in other words, FAR 91-180. With only limited exceptions, we have to have it. It says non-RVSM aircraft requesting climb to and descent from flight levels above RVSM airspace without intermediate level of contains policies for non-RVSM aircraft climbing through RVSM airspace to or from levels above that airspace. In other words, there's a block of airspace 29 to 41,000 feet. If your aircraft does not have this capability, you've got to stay below, or you could be operating above it if you got there by permission somehow. But you've got to be careful or mindful that you cannot be leveling off inside that airspace. If you get permission to descend, your goal is to descend through the airspace and then get out of there. But they don't want you hanging around in this special airspace. What's the benefit of RVSM? Obviously, airplanes can get closer together, they can fit more traffic in, they can be more precise in their controlling because those aircraft have this equipment. There's actually different antennas on aircraft that have RVSM capability. Okay, so remember the odds and evens altitudes that we had for the IFR training world, or the IFR flying world? Here now we have the flight levels in the case of RVSM. So going to the east, it's the odds, just like down low. So this looks the same as down at low altitude. If it wasn't for RVSM, they'd be split further apart. It'd be 4,000 feet between easterly altitudes rather than just 2,000 feet. And once again, this is according to magnetic course, not magnetic heading. Okay, so we have to be aware of the authority. This is how we comply. 91706. So people that are wanting to operate are going to have to go to 91706. We're not going to go there today, but that's going to give us some guidance. We have some advisory circulars. We can check out 9185, which will give us guidance on how to conduct our operations. It's talking about TCAS. We just talked about TCAS, a certain level of TCAS, and it could be that these have to be talking together because we want to have that traffic separation protection. Aircraft monitoring. Operators are required to participate in that program. It's described in AC 9185. I don't want to get into all the details, but just give you an awareness that when you get to an aircraft that has RVSM, you'll know which documents to start looking at. Okay, a purpose of RVSM approvals databases. Let's see, do you want to read that for us, Mr. Miguel?
Sure. All RVSM designated airspaces monitor airspace ATC RVSM approvals. Databases determine whether or not clearances can be issued into RVSM airspace. RVSM program managers regularly review the operators and aircraft that operate in RVSM airspace to identify and investigate those aircraft and operators flying in RVSM airspace, but not listed on the RSVM approvals database.
Okay. So in other words, they're not necessarily keeping track of who's all authorized to operate in that space. It's a bit of an honor system going on here. Okay, let's have a look at flight planning. So when we're flight planning, you know, when you're filling out your nav log, it has all of the equipment requirements and capabilities of your aircraft. It really matters what you put as equipment on your flight plan. If you tell them nothing, you file a standard generic flight plan, they will assume that you have the capabilities and the potential that's expected of your aircraft. Obviously, in a Cessna 152, they're not thinking about RVSM. But if you're in an aircraft that is certified to say flight level 410 or whatever the aircraft is you're flying, they're expecting that you're going to be able to play the game and that you're going to be able to comply with that game. So you need to make an effort to notify in the remarks, hey, we are not RVSM capable. You need to draw attention so that they can reroute you or plan differently